Index fragmentation can greatly affect performance, especially on busy tables. It occurs when the logical order of our index pages becomes out of sync with the physical order of our data pages, and that happens as data is added or modified within a table. In this nugget, I'm going to show you how we can identify index fragmentation and the process for repairing it, which may require just a simple reorganization of the index or an entire rebuild. Let's begin with the methods used to identify index fragmentation. Let's start here with the GUI. Over in Object Explorer, I'm going to expand AdventureWorks. We'll head down here into tables, and let's just pick, how about the person.person table here. We'll head down to indexes, and let's choose one of these indexes here. How about this one right here? This is a non-clustered, non-unique index on last name, first name, and middle name. So if we right-click on this and head down to Properties, notice we have a page dedicated to fragmentation, and here it is. Total fragmentation for this index, 6.5%. Not too bad, but still, our goal is 0% for our indexes, and this is why we should include index maintenance in our maintenance strategies. So this is a great method to identify fragmentation for those one-off situations where you know what index you're troubleshooting. You can just go quickly look at it. Another method we have here comes in the form of some dynamic management objects here. We have a DMF, dynamic management function, known as DMDB index physical stats. We can use this a number of ways depending on the parameters that we pass into it. Notice the first parameter is the database ID, then the object ID, then the index ID, then the partition number, and then the mode. If we pass in null to all of these, it's going to perform a scan against every index for all databases on this instance. So that'll be our first query here. And we have a where clause on here to only return indexes that have fragmentation greater than 0, and we'll also sort it by that column descending. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this, and this is going to return us every fragmented index on this instance across all databases. And here is your key column here for identifying what that fragmentation is. So as we scroll down here, you can see we have some indexes that aren't too fragmented towards the bottom and some that are very fragmented here towards the top. Now let's utilize that first parameter to pass in a database ID to isolate this down to a specific database, and we'll choose AdventureWorks here. So we're going to pass AdventureWorks in as the DB ID, which we'll extract and store inside of a variable here called DB ID. We're also specifying our mode here as limited. There's limited mode, detailed mode, and sample mode, and limited will pretty much suffice for almost everything unless you need to do a deep analysis, but this will scan the leaf level of the index. If you do a detailed, it'll take statistics into account, and it'll take much longer, but it'll give you more accurate results. But again, this will suffice for most of your fragmentation needs. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this, and this will show us all of the index fragmentation where, again, it's greater than 0 for all of the indexes in the AdventureWorks database. And we've got a couple very fragmented ones here. Notice here that we don't know what the object is. We've got just an ID of the object here, so we can certainly join this up to the indexes DMV to figure out which index this is coming from, which I'll show you how to do here shortly. But this is great because we can get a nice view of all the index fragmentation within a database. Now, let's trim this down even further to a specific object. Let's say that we just wanted to target all the indexes on a specific table. Here we're also going to pass in the object ID of the person.person table, the one that we were just looking at. So this is going to return us all of these indexes and their fragmentation. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this, hit execute, and here it is. Here are all of these indexes over here, and notice here there is that 6.5 fragmented index that we were just looking at, which is this IX person underscore last name index. Now let's head over to our second script and talk about repairing these indexes and look at a more fleshed out query using DMDB index physical stats. So there's two options when repairing indexes: reorganize or rebuild. Reorganize is a much quicker process because it doesn't drop and recreate the index like a total rebuild will, and it will only reorganize the leaf level of the index. So the general rule here is if your indexes are less than 30% fragmented, then you're safe just simply performing a reorganization, and it'll be very quick. On the other hand, if you have severe fragmentation greater than 30%, then you will want to perform a rebuild, which again will drop and recreate that index. So let's start with less than 30% fragmentation here. Here's another query. This time we're going to join the sys.indexes catalog here to our DMF that we were just talking about. And what this is going to do is return all indexes in the AdventureWorks database that have between 1 and less than, so 1 and 29% fragmentation. And that's what we can see right here. So this will return all of those indexes that are candidates for a reorganization. Now, in order to reorganize, it's actually very simple. We can run an alter index, specify our index or all to reorganize all the indexes. Now, in this case, we're going to do this here on our purchase order header table. So if we do this, this will reorganize all of the indexes on that table. Now let's look at our next query, which is the exact same as the previous one, the difference being the where clause here. This will help us identify any indexes with severe fragmentation, those with more than 30% fragmentation in the AdventureWorks database. If we execute this, notice we've got 35 indexes in this database, and we've got quite a few here on the business entity contact table that will all require a rebuild. So let's just go ahead and rebuild all the indexes on that table. Notice here we're doing a rebuild rather than a reorganize. So this will drop and recreate every single index on that table. And now if we re-execute this query, we should see those indexes on that business entity contact table no longer show up because they're no longer fragmented. In this CBT Nugget, we covered what index fragmentation is, how to identify it, and when and how to repair it. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.